Okay, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here in Leicester. Yeah, just to let you know a little bit about how that came about. I mean, I did a short talk at Birmingham on crop circles. Crop circles is something I've had an interest in for a number of years, probably since the late 90s. My view on crop circles changed quite a bit over the years while I've been looking at it from different angles. So really the talk that I did in Birmingham was an accumulation of a lot of those years of research and looking into it and experiencing them for myself. And I was particularly keen to talk at Birmingham because my view in the last year or 18 months has changed quite considerably. And I think where I'm at now with it is at a really important stage. And I think I've come to discover a lot of really important things about the whole topic of crop circles that wasn't apparent previously. So what I'm going to do tonight is just share some of those experiences with you. So really this is just a little bit about myself and where I am on this journey. So really I would call myself a truth seeker, and I think anyone who calls himself a truth seeker has to be prepared to change their mind and go where the evidence takes them. And this is where I've been with crop circles, because I've looked at it from different angles over the years and come to different conclusions. And I'm really just following that line of truth. And sometimes we have to really take a very different look at things. When I became convinced about 18 months, 2 years ago, that all the crop circles were man-made, which basically then made me lose my interest in the subject for a little while. Then this year started, and it was a really slow year to get started. There wasn't very many good crop circles coming. I mean, I just used to like it for the images anyway, so I'd look at them for that, but it wasn't happening on that front either. So I started to look at other aspects of this phenomenon. It just keeps, for some reason, this subject just keeps drawing me back in, even when it seemingly has no real interest. I keep getting drawn back in. And I started to look at the other side. I thought, well, if they are being man-made, you know, why are these guys doing it? What's going on? What's going on in their mind? And what's going on with the research and how that's reported and so on? And I started to look at that and found a whole new world, basically, in terms of the research. A totally different perspective on the subject than I'd looked at before. And this is really where the Seek Truth thing comes in, because I think this is where the crop circle research industry doesn't always do its bit. And I think there's a lot of holding back the truth in crop circle research. It's more, I mean, I don't deny most of the researchers involved in it are seeking truth and started out with those intentions. But certainly at the moment, it seems that there is more of a case of truth management rather than truth seeking and telling of the truth. So that's what some of those comments at the end of that video were about. And I'm going to be talking much more about those as I go through, because I think as you go through and as you look more and more into detail at this whole subject, it starts to get more and more interesting. This is the traditional view of the crop circle world. You've got some of the best known researchers at the top there. These are the traditionally known as the heroes of the subject. They're the ones delivering us the evidence, telling us what's going on in the crop circle world, running the conferences, writing the books, producing the calendars, doing all of this stuff. And the circle makers at the bottom there, traditionally known as the villains. I mean, and they do get a very, very hard time from most of the mainstream researchers. So much that you cannot even mention man-made crop circles or circle making, human circle makers at many of the conferences without a lot of abuse and put downs from a lot of the mainstream researchers. They don't want to go there. They don't want to entertain that aspect of it at all. And certainly I was one of those a few years ago. So I know where they're coming from, but, and I used to think the same thing. I used to think that these guys were telling us exactly what we needed to know, telling us the truth. There is a real mystery in the fields, and it's not down to these guys with the planks. And they were just there muddying the waters and making it, you know, complicated for everybody to work out what's going on. But as I've gone through, you know, that view's changed a little bit, as you'll see. I don't know what people know about crop circles. So I thought, well, I'll just start with a little bit of background just to fill you in, because crop circles aren't a new phenomenon by any means. This is from 1678, Hertfordshire publication called The Mowing Devil. Some of you may have seen this before. It's quite a well-known article. But it's the earliest known record of a crop circle. I don't know if that was a genuine crop circle, the same as it is now, but all the reports are very similar to what we've experienced now. And certainly, the early days of crop circles wasn't the complicated geometry and the exotic patterns that you get now. They were just very simple circles like this one. This is some pictures of some of the earlier circles in the modern era. So Colin Andrews was probably the first, or amongst the first people that started investigating the phenomenon of crop circles in this country. And these are some of the early pictures. I think he started in about 1983 investigating simple circles that were being reported in fields around the country, mostly in the south of England, in the Wiltshire area. And that's still the case today. And as you see, these are some of the circles of that time. Very simple structures, but very enigmatic in their own way. And they're very different now to what we get now. And what was characteristic about all of these early ones was that they were swirled into the crop, and they had a very distinct swirl pattern to them, very unlike many of the man-made ones of now. So there was a real mystery then, and a lot of people started looking at that and trying to work out how that happened. And we're still talking about it now. You know, so it just shows how long that mystery has been going on. You know, and there's so much politics involved in crop circles as well. You wouldn't believe. You know, the infighting is infamous, and it's just been going on right from the beginning, from '83 onwards. As you went through the 80s and into the 90s, crop circles got a little bit more elaborate, like the ones in the picture here. A bit more like we may be familiar with. And then we had these guys turning up in 1991. You may be familiar with this story of Doug and Dave. And effectively, this is where crop circles ended. The story of crop circles seemed to end at one point. It was certainly a punctuation mark in the subject at that point, and it took a long while for it to recover, because basically the newspapers broke a story that these guys were making all the crop circles. Now, these two definitely were making crop circles at that time, but they certainly didn't make all of them, as they claimed to do. And they've got some interesting stories as well to tell. But this report appeared in the paper and caused a lot of problem, and particularly when they then set up some established researchers, and they got Doug and Dave to make a crop circle for them and got a well-known researcher to come in, and then he pronounced it a genuine formation and proclaimed it as the most wonderful thing that had ever happened. And then, of course, that was another nail in the coffin, and the subject took a long time to recover, and it disappeared off the media satellite from there. You know, no one was reporting it at all. At that time, it was getting a lot of publicity, and I think it was getting a little bit too big for some people, and someone somewhere decided they were going to draw a line under it, and this sort of did that job. And for a long time, crop circles disappeared off the horizon. And I must admit, I lost track of it at this point as well. And it wasn't until much later that I realized it was still going on. And as it went on, the formations got more elaborate. There was more geometric designs, more sacred geometry started to come into it. Again, it was always considered, how could people do something like this? It's just seemed at the time unbelievable. But then they got even more complicated. This is one from 2001. And I think this is where I sort of woke up a bit more again to the subject. I'd been following it sort of, on and off up to that point. And, it sort of re-emerged in the late 90s and with a bit of a vengeance. And then this appeared in 2001 in Milk Hill in Wiltshire. And as you can see, 780 feet wide with 409 individual circles. And as far as I know, that's the biggest crop circle known at this point. I think there's longer ones in terms of length, but in terms of the number of circles and the sheer size of the area that it covers, I think that is probably the biggest, if not maybe one of the biggest ever. And it certainly made a lot of people sit up and take notice. And this one, again, sort of got the subject back into the news again. And people asking, how is this possible? How could people make that? Where did it come from?
These crop circles, do all of them appear overnight, in one night?
Not always, but most of them, yes. This one did appear overnight, and it was a rain-soaked night from all accounts, and there was no trace of boot marks and mud and all that kind of thing in the crop circle. It was immaculate when it was first discovered. So it is one of the the big mysteries of the subject and how that was done. I'm not saying whether that was done by people or not. I've got an open mind on that.
Favourite one. I've got that.
Yeah, me too. I really like that one. I think it's beautiful, and it still gets people talking today. And I don't think, in terms of its geometric design, I don't think it's even been bettered even today. But there are some fantastic ones that I'll show you in a bit as well. So, the question of who done it. This is what it's become. Unfortunately, I think this is not where the main focus of the subject should be, but that's what it's become. It's become a whodunit, and everyone is just interested in who's done this and why. Okay, and I think we do get a little bit sidetracked with this, but I'm going to cover it anyway, because that's what most people seem to be interested in. From my YouTube site and my videos, more people want to talk about this aspect of it than anything else. So I'm going to cover this briefly, and then we'll go on to look at other areas as well. So there's some various different views on the subject. Matthew Williams is quite a well-known crop circle maker. He was the first person, well, the only person ever to be convicted of making a crop circle. Okay, he was basically he was set up by a couple of researchers, and he admitted to what he'd done, and he got a fine. That was about it. But he's notorious for that. But he's now become quite a spokesman on the subject of man-made crop circles, and you'll see a bit more of him as we go through. This is his arch rival, Michael Glickman. He's a very well-known researcher, and he goes completely opposite way and says that all crop circles are made by aliens. Well, certainly most of them. I think he admits that some of them are man-made, but he's on the whole, he goes down the route that it must be aliens because we can't explain it any other way. And he gives some very good arguments in that front. So, if that's an area you're interested in, if you think that's what it is, he's someone you might want to listen to, because he has got a lot of knowledge on the subject, and he does believe in that area. But I don't always know if that's really what these people believe or if that's just what they're saying. And that's what we're going to look at in a while. Colin Andrews, he says that 80% of the crop circles are man-made and 20% are of unknown origin. Now, Colin is someone who I really do admire in the crop circle field. He's been there right from the beginning. And I would say he's truly an open-minded truth seeker who does go with the evidence, and he has been prepared on many occasions to reevaluate his own theories and change his mind. And I think any true truth seeker should be prepared to do that and always be prepared to admit that you were wrong on occasions. And if the information changes again, him, like myself, I'm sure would be prepared to alter that view accordingly. But he came up with that figure, 80% of man-made are man-made, 20% unknown, through a lot of years of research by analysing the detail of many of the crop circles, the recurring patterns that he could see. All right, so I think he's certainly a guy that you should listen to in terms of his views on the subject. And I think he talks a lot of sense. So here's some of the leading suspects of who is behind this mystery. The ET, the aliens, yeah. They are certainly number one on a lot of people's list, and judging from the comments I get on my YouTube channel from people, I only have to mention that aliens are not involved in this, or I say that people have made, this crop circle is man-made, and I get all kinds of abuse from people that are telling me it's aliens. How can you possibly not say it's aliens? And we'll look at the evidence for that in a minute, okay? But, all right, but I certainly used to believe that. Number two, probably on many people's list, is humans, man-made crop circles. And that's known to have been going on for some time, and we'll look at the evidence for that as well. And again, there's some very interesting evidence I'll show you in a short while. This is an interesting theory. Military technology. You may have heard something about that. And it's certainly, again, not a theory that I would rule out completely. Although it's very difficult to get any real evidence on this for obvious reasons. But it has been, this by the way, sorry, I'm pointing at the wrong one. This is a real photograph. This was actually still from a video that somebody took over Wiltshire of a beam of light that was seen moving around the countryside. And it's never been satisfactorily explained. It wasn't directly related to crop circles. It happened, I think, just before the start of the crop circle season last year. And you see the video, and you can see this thing moving around for quite a while over the fields. What it was doing, where it was from, I have no idea. But that is one idea, that it comes from the military. They are doing some secret testing or experiments on either people or crop, I don't know. But it has been suggested that many of these crop circles could have been made through military technology like microwave beam technology, or somebody suggested to me recently, non-deflected beams of highly charged particles creating ionization. I had an email from somebody who claimed to have worked for the military and knew a lot about this subject, and he was saying that's how they do it. It's not microwave technology, it's this non-deflected beams of highly charged particles, and he was saying they're doing it for social experiments, and there's all kind of dark agendas involved in that. Well, I'm not entirely convinced of that. I wasn't convinced by him, but I might be wrong. I don't know. And certainly, I don't think that it's not impossible that some of the crop circles could have been made that way. So that one we looked at, the Milk Hill Galaxy, as it's called, we saw from 2001, that may be a contender for that, because the way it came and the immaculate nature of it and the sheer scale of it is a possibility. But certainly, if that has been used, this kind of technology has been used like that. It's only been used in a very limited way, I would say. And this guy, I probed him on how often he thinks this has been used and how often it is used for crop circles. And he says probably no more than about 3 or 4 times a year, which basically accounts for a very small percentage, because on an average year there's about 80 to 100 crop circles in this country of varying degrees. But so if he's saying 3 or 4 of them are made like that, there's still an awful lot that are unaccounted for. Now this is just bracketing the other aspects of it, other natural or supernatural or unexplained phenomena. And there's aspects of this which I'll look at in more detail as we go on. And some people believe in this thing called Gaia, which is Mother Earth. It's actually coming from the Earth itself. All right. So this is a belief that many people have, and it's something, again, I think in this area, I don't think has been explored properly, and it's an area that links in very much with what I'll talk about later. Okay, well, I'm just going to look at some of the evidence for the alien side of things, because it's worth considering, because I think it's serious. A lot of people seriously do believe in this area, and as I say, I certainly did for a long while. So I don't hold up against anyone that does believe that. And many people have very good reasons for believing that. Maybe they've experienced things as well. But there have been a number of sightings of strange beings associated with crop circles, or certainly in the vicinity, and a lot of UFO sightings. Certainly the area where the crop circles proliferate in Wiltshire is renowned for UFO sightings. Whether they're related to crop circles or not, I really don't know. I don't personally think so. But it's certainly a fact that there's been many, many reports over the years, going back a long, long time, for UFO and strange sightings of strange beings. In fact, these people in the picture here, this is an artist's impression of something that happened in 2010. So very recent history. That there was this incident where a policeman, was patrolling alongside Silbury Hill in Wiltshire, near Avebury, and he was just patrolling down the road, the A4, and he saw about 3 or 4 people in the fields, which is opposite Silbury Hill. And they were dressed in white. They seemed to be very tall. And he got out of his car and called to them and said, "Oh, what are you doing in the field?" And these guys just got up and legged it over the hill. That's the picture of the actual place where it happened, over the hill. And just over that hill, there is a crop circle as well at that time. So a lot of people put 2 and 2 together and linked the 2 things together, and assumed that these people were something to do with that crop circle, and they were somehow alien beings. So I don't know. I don't doubt that happened, and something happened to that police officer. Who these people were, where they're from, I have no idea. But certainly that area, especially around Silbury Hill, it seems, has got hundreds and hundreds of reports of this kind of thing happening. So a lot of people even speculate that it could be maybe there's some kind of portal to another dimension situated around that area. And certainly that would indicate why there's so many historical sacred sites in that area. It seems to be a centre of high energy that seems to attract weird things. And crop circles are just another thing that it attracts, and they do appear around that area, Silbury Hill, very frequently. This is a little bit more to do with evidence that there could be an alien side to it. This is a crop circle appeared, I can't remember the year, I think it was 2003. An incredibly intricate pattern. As you can see, it's not a circle at all. This is the crop circle on the left, by the way. The one on the right, the image on the right, is the template of the, there was a probe was sent up into space. I forget the name of it now. It was just like it had basic artifacts of Earth on it, and it was basically to make contact with alien life somewhere in the universe. So it was just sent out into the galaxy with this data on it, and it basically indicated that we are, a carbon-based race, and there's a few basic facts about our DNA and things like that. And then this crop circle came almost like as a reply to that. And as you can see in the middle there's like a little figure as opposed to a bigger one for the human. And there's some subtle differences. So a lot of people connected those two things together and said, well, yeah, there must be a link here. Maybe it is like a direct message and direct contact. Okay? And I think that's probably one of the best evidences that there is some kind of thing going on with an alien species. And who's to say they didn't do that? I don't know. That followed it, actually, just a couple of weeks or a couple of days later. This was a face that appeared. And that's even more incredible in many ways, because it's done in this kind of dot matrix style, which had never been seen before in any crop circles. It was a unique way of presenting it. And it appeared alongside, as you can see in the picture there, alongside that message, right next to the radio mast, the communications mast there. So it was seen as direct communication. And a lot of people have interpreted that face as human. Some have interpreted it as alien. In fact, you see some people have done like a proper drawing of it based on that, and it doesn't look very human to me. So it's a sort of cross between a human and an alien there. And it certainly was a very eye-catching formation that appeared. And then there was this one. And that seemed to confirm it completely with everybody. There's alien face, a very clear alien. There's no debate about whether it's an alien or human on this one. It's very clearly alien. And then there was this strange disc with it as well, which nobody could fathom at all to start with. And it took some time before people did actually fathom it out. And they had a few sort of people working on the translation of it. And this is what it translated as: beware the bearers of false gifts and their broken promises, much pain but still time. There is good out there. We oppose deception, conduit closing. Yeah. So I don't really know what to make of that. Considering if that's supposed to be a communication from an alien species, it's a pretty strange one. And it doesn't really answer many questions for me. But a lot of people got excited about that. But for a lot of people, it was a bit of an anticlimax. So, I don't know, the jury's still out on that one, I think. But, okay, you might have your own views on that. Okay, but that's I think is the best evidence for an alien connection, anyway. For man-made, okay? So man-made crop circles are traditionally called hoaxes. And as I said at the beginning, a lot of researchers regard people making crop circles as hoaxers and muddying the waters, confusing everybody, and just getting in the way of proper research, okay? But I think there's a lot more to look at on this side of things. Personally, I don't believe there is such a thing as a hoax crop circle. Every crop circle, whether it's man-made or other, has value as far as I'm concerned, and sometimes that value is not always appreciated. And I think that's where the research needs to go in terms of looking at those kind of things. Some people regard it as art form. Is it just an art form? Are they just expressing themselves like someone, painting a picture, or Banksy doing the graffiti on the walls, things like that? Some people have likened it to that kind of thing. Is it that kind of art? Or is it deeper than that? Does it have like a spiritual aspect? Is it for spiritual expression? And I think there's elements of all of that involved in crop circle makers. Some of them are doing it for a laugh occasionally, okay? Some of them are doing it for their art, and they do call themselves artists. Others might have more of a deeper spiritual reason for doing it. And I think probably the latter two. Most of the crop circle makers that I've come across would fall into that category. But they're not all good. Okay? These are crap circles, not crop circles. Okay, so these are some from this year, and this is what the standard was like in the early part of the year, in April, May, and June. You were getting a lot of this kind of thing coming out. Clearly man-made, and not very, very good in that respect. But even still, even with those, there was a lot of people in the crop circle research community analysing these kind of crop circles and looking at them, in many different ways, which I always found a little bit odd. Although, as I say, every crop circle's got its value, but some more than others. Okay, well, there's a little test for you. Which one of these would you say is real? Which one is man-made? Okay, there's two. That one appeared this year. The one on the left appeared last year. So 2010, 2011. Okay, well, most people would say the real phenomena is the one on the left, because it's big, it's dramatic, it seems to be trying to say something, it gives it an air of mystery, but how's that done over that scale? The other one, by the way, would probably fit into one of those middle circles. It's just a small circle, probably about 15 to 20 meters across at the most. And just to give you some idea of scale, those tram lines on there are usually between about 10 and 15 meters wide, sometimes more than that. So that's a pretty humongous size. But I'll tell you a little bit about these two formations, because it really sums up where the mystery is to me. The one on the left is definitely man-made. And I know that because the people who made it were caught making it. Not by me, but there was a researcher that I think was tipped off that there was this going to be made, and was camped out waiting, and then actually confronted these people at the time. He didn't get anyone arrested for doing it, but it caused quite a commotion at the time. And I think then that crop circle was half completed on the first night, and then they came back and finished it on the second night. Or it may even have been 3 nights, I can't remember. But it was one that was definitely known to have been man-made. So that just shows the kind of standard that is possible. The one on the right, most people actually ignored that when it first came out. And it almost slipped under the radar, this one. It's just a small, simple circle. And most people don't seem to be interested in small, simple circles these days. But that's more like the original phenomenon was. But this one, when I started to look at that one, it had quite a weird story connected to it, because this one was believed to have appeared in daylight between 11 in the morning and about 11:30 in the morning. something like that. And apparently there was a small airfield there where they do flights over the area for looking at crop circles and sacred sites. This is very close to Avebury in Wiltshire. And there was a team of people flew out at about 11 o'clock in the morning over that field, which is very close to the airfield. They flew over the field and there was nothing there. They then flew back at 11:45 and that was there. And when you went into it as well, it was the most immaculate formation that you'd seen as well. I'll show you the interior of it. But and other people narrowed that time window down from 45 minutes to even about 20 minutes. So no one really knows how that one appeared. Certainly there's no reports of anybody being seen making it. So it's possible that there is still a real phenomenon alive out there, and strange little things like this do crop up every year. Okay, but just a little bit more on this one, and I'll just show you how you can see the difference. Now this one is, as I say, it was proved to be a man-made one, and you can actually look, when you look closer, I don't know if you can see very clearly on that screen, but on each circle you can see concentric rings inside the flattened area. Can you see that? Okay. Now that, to me, is a dead giveaway that it's been made with boards. Okay, and it's one of the things that Colin Andrews picked up on when he was investigating all this kind of thing. And what they would do, they would start at the outside. So they do the outer rim first, and they would do the outside and work their way in like that. And it leaves these trails. And the circle makers call it combing. They're combing that area, flattening it off. So you can see combing marks on it, on that formation. And if you look at the pictures of many of the well-known formations, you see that on so many. And that's basically a real giveaway that it's been made through boards. Sometimes they use rollers, but for most of the circles it is boards. That's the other one, the small one. If you look close at the detail there. Now that one, you didn't get that pattern. You didn't get those concentric rings and board marks at all. And that one is, I've never seen an interior of a crop circle look quite like that. It has a kind of a flow to it, almost like water. And there's no marks anywhere. It sort of curves and weaves. And that one, I remember hearing a researcher who's open to the man-made aspect as well. He looked at that one and said that was the only crop circle he looked at this year, or 2011, that he couldn't explain. So there's certainly a lot of mystery about that one particular formation. And so it's not always the most spectacular. So these are pictures from Colin Andrews and from his early research, and that was one of the circles, the one on the left there, that he identified as one of the real phenomena that has this swirl pattern to it. And there's one on the right which he knew was a man-made one, when you see those concentric circles as evidence of being made by boards. Now this one some of you might have seen before. It's a very famous crop circle. Yeah, anybody recognise that one? Yeah. This one appeared, I think it was 1996, and it appeared right opposite Stonehenge. And this has become pivotal in the whole crop circle debate, this one formation. It's really significant because the crop circle researchers, the ones that are pushing the it's a real phenomena brigade, they will hold this one up and say, this is the proof that it's not man-made, because this one is rumoured to have appeared in 45 minutes during daylight hours as well. Okay, so what the story was that there was some people at Stonehenge. There was a pilot flew over the area didn't report seeing that, flew back the other way 45 minutes later and saw that one, and then said it wasn't there when I flew over 45 minutes ago. So everybody got really excited about that and thought, well, there it is. That's proof that there's a real phenomenon going on here. And that story still is debated today. Most people in the crop circle community, you know, if you see the mainstream researchers, they'll put that one right at the top of their list as the evidence. This is it. But, and I went along with that for a long time. But as I say, I always try and keep an open mind about everything. And I have to seriously question that because you look at that, for a long time I couldn't get hold of a high resolution picture of that formation. It seems to be quite hard to find. That was the best one I had. It was from 1996, where the resolution wasn't as good as it is now, and it's directly above. And in most of the crop circle books and things like that, you'll see that crop circle is always taken from a bit of an angle with Stonehenge in the background, and with all the story about how it's created around it. But you look at it from above, and you see the same marks on that as you have on those other ones, which I've just shown to you are proven man-made ones, with the concentric circles in those rings. So to me, that looks definite man-made. I'm not claiming I know that. I'm just saying, from my point of view, from an open-minded point of view, that is man-made, okay? Because it has all the hallmarks of being man-made. It's also, if you look through the center of those rings, those circles, you can see a line. That's another giveaway that it's man-made, because these circle makers have what they call a construction line, and they will map out the shape of the formation first of all, and they will walk that, and they walk like a sideways motion around that, like that, and it's literally only about that, you know, shoe's width round, but they walk it around, and then they create the circles around that area. And also, well, it was Colin Andrews again investigated this, and he spoke to known circle makers at the time, and he spoke to someone called Rod Dickinson, who he was led to believe that this guy was behind this crop circle. I don't know if he was or just knew who was involved, but certainly he had a lot of information about it to give to Colin Andrews, and he was explaining about how that was made. So what he was explaining there was how that is actually constructed. And what I thought was interesting was the fact that he pointed out that there was that central circle, the one at the bottom of that spiral, you know, like the right in the middle there. There's a central circle. And that, to me, is like the giveaway, really, that it's man-made, because that shouldn't be there. If it was following the proper pattern of the Fibonacci code, you know, the way it progresses around there, it shouldn't be there. But he was saying that was there so they could map it out all the way around. They had to get into the crop to do that, and then they created that circle around it. And it was hailed as like the most perfect crop circle ever, this, and it is phenomenal. But it's not entirely perfect either. You can see blemishes in there if you look closely as well. But a lot of the mainstream researchers certainly won't draw your attention to them. But to me, even looking at the very end of that tail, doesn't follow the same line to me. And there's a few circles that aren't quite perfect circles as well. So I think a legend has been created around that somehow. I don't quite know how that came about, how people reported it appearing in 45 minutes, but there could have been like cloud cover or mist, something like that, and it was missed on the first time. But to me, it's you know, it was man-made, and these legends do have a habit of just happening like this, and they've been built up out of all proportion in the crop circle world. Now that's another phenomenal design, isn't it? Has anybody seen that before? That was in Holland a few years ago, and it was absolutely massive. took everybody by surprise when it first appeared, but then just a day or two later, it was revealed that it was actually made by about 60 people as a bit of an experiment. They wanted to try and create a crop circle and try and create a world record, basically, and they actually failed to break the world record as well, because it isn't actually the biggest crop circle ever. But it just shows you again what people can do. Now that one surely can't be made by people. Okay, would you say people could make that? Well, it was made by people. Again, this was one of the ones, I mean, I was quite disappointed when I found that was made by people, because I really liked that one. And again, Colin Andrews investigated that, and he was even given some of the design plans that showed how it was done. And that's some of it, which shows, and actually when it was revealed how they made it, it was nothing like any of the experts had imagined. They imagined how they made all those arcs and circles, and how did they do that? How did they get all that? But it actually was a process of the construction from the outside in that just created that process bit by bit as it went through. So it was an ingenious way of doing it. So that's one of the things, because I think a lot of people don't necessarily appreciate how these people do it, because we don't do it. We don't really understand how they do it. So we just think it's impossible. But when to them, it's their art, and they take it very seriously. And here's just a few more that are known man-made. That was one that was filmed and witnessed by researchers at night. That was one that was initially was thought to be a real phenomenon, but then was revealed as a company logo, man-made. Now, okay, we come to this year. This was probably, I think it was the biggest crop circle of 2011. Fantastic size to it. And again, people were gobsmacked when they saw that, and reading all kinds of deep meanings into this. And it really got everybody excited. So again, most of the crop circle researchers were pronouncing this as the genuine article, and people couldn't make this. Okay, but now just watch this incredible footage and see what is possible for humans to do in the dead of night.
And this is night vision footage which was shot, and you can see the circles being created on the left hand side, and as the circle starts to take shape, you're getting the rings are being made first, and you can see the circle makers actually going from ring to ring and actually starting to fill it, but then leaving the circles behind, and some are filled, some are not. That one's being filled completely in. You can see the circle maker going around. But this has been sped up, I should say, 6,000 times. Basically, I was allowed to film this. The circle makers told me where they were going to be, and the reason I didn't get started, it should be said, at filming this when the camera first comes on and they've already started a certain way, is because I didn't know where they were exactly, and I was told to be on a certain hillside, and I didn't know where in the fields, and it took me a while to kind of work out where this was actually starting, and then I trained the cameras on that area and then filmed for the next 5 hours. But yeah, basically some footage of a crop circle being made. You don't get to see this very often, and people complain. And they say, "Where will you say you make these circles? But we've never seen the stuff. We've never seen the footage of them actually being made, a real circle being made." And it's like, well, you don't get much more real than this, because this was proclaimed by a lot of people to actually be a genuine crop circle, and they liked it a lot. So. The trouble why we don't actually get round to making footage like this is because, I mean, you've got to have night vision cameras to start with, and in this particular location it was so dark, there was no moonlight, it was heavy cloud cover, it was so dark that the gain had to be turned up on the night vision, so you're seeing these speckles, and there's very little detail really that you can see, and the field was quite far away. I had to use a zoom lens on the front of the night vision to actually be able to see this, which again, that cut down the amount of light that we were seeing through the night vision. You know, basically this was proclaimed by many to be a real crop circle. That's the interesting thing, is that had people turned around and said that they didn't like this circle, then, you know, we'd be in an awkward position. But a lot of people said that they did like this circle, and that there was a lot of complex geometry in it, and that it would have been very hard to do.
That was just put on the internet on the 21st of December. This just Christmas just gone, so it's only just come to light, that video. So it's causing quite a big storm on the internet now, as you can imagine. A lot of people are trying to claim that it's faked and all this kind of thing, but I don't believe it is. I think that is a genuine film of a crop circle being made, and by aliens, of course. And it was widely accepted as a fantastic formation. That was just some of the reaction that did get when it first appeared. And this was before, obviously, the video came out. This is what some of the mainstream researchers were saying about it. Don't know if you can read that. This fantastic example was reported near Inkpen on the Wiltshire-Berkshire border, clearly representing a huge serpent with a trident tongue and measuring in the region of 700 feet in length. It is by far the most impressive design of the season so far. Okay. So many of those people that were proclaiming that as a phenomenal crop circle no doubt would not entertain any thoughts that that could have been man-made. Now that's really where the debate needs to wake up a little bit, you know. And if you want to take a break, we'll do that now, because after the break is where I think this subject really gets interesting, because it's about looking at the whole phenomenon behind this. And even if circles like this are man-made, I think there's still a lot more to learn. So the acknowledgement of the involvement of humans in the creation of crop circles is not the end of the mystery. It is just the beginning of a new one.